Hello, I'm Maria Hallbrown, and this is LA Currents. Well, good things are coming. That's the messaging you see anytime you log on to Los Angeles's Rec and Parks website. And there's a good reason why. It's a wonderful program. All the funds came from Measure A. Well, let's find out what all of that is and the parks that are affected. I'm delighted to be joined by Bill Jones, the Chief Management Analyst for LA Rec and Parks. The very first thing I have to ask you is, why Rec and Parks? You have no idea how hard it is. I want to say Park and Recs, but that would be totally wrong. It's Recreation and Parks.
It is, and in fact, across most of the U.S., most of the park departments are known as Parks and Recreation. And LA is just very unique. I always like to think of it as we put the fun part first. You know, the activities, the everything. Our parks are very important to everybody, and I know that. But really what we're looking at is parks are for everybody, but the fun part's got to come first.
So I alluded to Measure A. And Measure A was the catapult, the impetus for all of these improvements. And so what exactly was Measure A, and what happened, and what did it provide to you to be able to improve everything?
Sure. So, it's a very good question because, we're always looking for funding to improve our parks. And before Measure A, there was Proposition A, which was a bond measure. And that bond measure is basically the selling of bonds to get an amount of money that we can make investments on the front end. And they last for about 25 years. Well, Proposition A came to an end in 2019. And Measure A was put on the ballot in 2016, approved by the voters overwhelmingly. And it's a tax assessment. And the difference really between Measure A and Proposition A is that because Measure A is a tax assessment, it goes on into perpetuity. So it's continuous funding for our parks. It certainly is not going to be like Proposition A where we get a lot of money on the front end, but over time we're going to get far more money and we're going to be able to sustain our parks into perpetuity. So that's really the exciting thing about Measure A.
Okay, so a lot of these parks needed some attention. So what were some of the real critical issues you looked at to determine what needed to be upgraded?
So that's an excellent question because many of our parks do need upgrades. I think our general manager often says, if I could have all the money in the world, I'd take care of all of our problems. Unfortunately, we don't have that situation. So some of the things that we look at is certainly the age of the equipment and the facilities in our parks. We look at landscaping, perhaps things that have shifted, tree roots that uproot some of our pathways, or areas that have become bogged down and waterbogged, and so we have to get in and improve the drainage and things. And so we're looking at a number of factors. We're also looking and listening to the communities to tell us what's wrong with our parks. Right. Nobody knows better than the people in the community that use their parks day in and day out. So we're looking at that. And really the age of the equipment. There was an assessment that was done in 2016 as part of Measure A, where the communities came together. LA County Regional Park and Open Space District came in, met with our communities, and said, "Hey, tell us what's wrong on the front end." And so there is a short list of items that we're paying attention to. And then we're doing our own assessments, follow-on assessments, to see if those conditions still exist or have worsened, and if the priorities have changed.
All right. Now, we were talking a little bit, because there's an enormous amount of projects going on, so I'm trying to keep track. You know better than I do. So there are 18 parks that are a part of this?
So right now we have 15 projects in progress right now.
Okay.
We're planning a new batch of projects, probably about 5 to 7 projects that will be moving in the next few months, that will be continuing that. But the city of Los Angeles is made up of 43 study areas. And so we're looking at these 43 study areas. The funds that each study area gets must be used within those study areas and the parks within those areas. So we're looking at those and working with the communities, the council office, to see what parks are going to be our next projects. But really what we're looking at is somewhere between about 20 to 25 projects each year with the funding that comes in. Some of the funding needs to roll up because the amount of money that's received doesn't necessarily will complete an entire project in and of itself.
Right. Wow. Okay. So, they're all over all the districts, as you said, 43 regions. We've had this conversation earlier in that we couldn't even get through all of the projects. Right. So we did half of them, and so we'll be able to chat about the other half that are going on right now. So one of the most important things is, what are you thinking about? You were talking about roots being uprooted and things, but then when it comes to actual equipment and that, what are some of the safety concerns? You and I grew up in an era in which our playground equipment could probably hurt us and or burn us and or kill us. So, I'm imagining there's a lot of safety concerns thought about when you're, even replacing playground equipment.
Right. So safety is a utmost concern to us. And so when we look at the age of equipment, we're looking at where joints may have rusted over time, metal that's exposed that could be hot during summer months, sharp edges that may have cropped up, or vandalism certainly that just repeated vandalism that has taken its toll on equipment. So those are some of the safety concerns we're looking at. Certainly on pathways, we want all of our parks accessible to everybody in the community. And so, we're taking a look at those types of issues. So when we do, like, for example, play equipment, we don't do just the play equipment. We're looking more holistically at what's the pathway around that, what's the pathway to that piece of equipment. Are there water fountains? Some communities say, hey, it's nice to have the picnic area, or the play equipment, but there's no place to sit. So we might add a picnic area to that. Those are the types of issues. If we have, if we're going to take up a pathway, sometimes it's an opportunity to upgrade our irrigation system and make it more efficient, and those types of things. So we do take, it seems very simple to say, we're going to come in and do play equipment replacement, but really there's a lot more that's going on.
What's going on in the world of technology when it comes to play equipment? Are we using a lot of recycled materials, or are there a lot of thoughts about the usage and how it improves a child's physique or eye-hand coordination, that kind of thing? Do you consider those? Do you consider, like you said, the sun and the location and the trees and the size and the age of the community, all those things when it comes to playground equipment?
We do, and play equipment, there's many facets to it. So some of the ones that you just brought up, the use of recycled materials, are the materials going to be durable over time? Are they going to be safe for our children? Are they are there any concerns associated with the materials that we're using? Our planners, our architects, and our engineers, they're all looking at those and working with our vendors to ensure that we're really getting the top end play equipment for our communities. But you're absolutely correct. There's study after study after study that says the improvements that are being made to play equipment are really having a very positive impact on our communities with our children. The physical development, the mental development, being able to come to a park and develop socially, those are they're out there on the forefront with these studies, and they're showing that that the type of play equipment and the things that you mentioned, the dexterity, the thought process that goes into them, they really are having a positive impact on children in our communities.
And gone are the days of the sandbox.
Yes.
Can't have those. All right, well, let's talk about some of these actual parks because a lot has really been exciting. And they're all over the place, as we mentioned. So let's talk about the Del Rey Lagoon. Now, that was scheduled to be done, should be, while we're sitting here talking. Everything good, and what happened there?
So Del Rey Lagoon
is where, by the way?
Is down, it's in an area of Playa del Rey, the northwest corner, I guess, of Westchester area, then just northwest of LAX. Little pocket community. It's bordered by the Ballona Creek, to the north, where it has its outlet to the ocean. And of course, there's a lagoon there, a saltwater lagoon that's environmentally friendly and taking care of the birds and all the things in that area. But for the community, we looked at the play equipment, the path of travel. The community asked again for a picnic area. We've added water fountains to that park. And I'm happy to report that that's one of our projects that's complete and open to our community.
All right, so moving a little bit north in Studio City, we have Woodbridge Park, and one of the major improvements that was required there was new walkways. So was that a tree issue, or just an ADA issue, or just age issue? Needed to get some new walkways in Woodbridge Park, and how's it doing?
So it's probably a combination of all three. Anytime that we break into a pathway, we're always making certain to work with building and safety, look at the current building code to ensure that we're complying with ADA rules, and that our projects are built to those standards in the LA Building Code. So Woodbridge, I can't really say whether it was the trees or various things, but as I mentioned earlier, the irrigation lines, if they break, they may cause slumping of the soil, or tree roots certainly uplift pathways. So when we go into do that pathway, we're looking at all of those issues and making certain that it's not something that we're going to have to tear out and replace in a couple of years. We want them to be durable and last for a good decade or so.
All right, so I don't know if you know the answer to this one, but I was fascinated because in doing my kind of due diligence, the Palms Rec Center is also known as Rosalind Wyman. Now, those of us who are sports fans, or those of us who are arts aficionados, know Roz as being one of the critical reasons why the Dodgers are in Los Angeles, as well as an enormous supporter of arts and culture and its necessity in our very existence, as well as her being an incredible politician. Why is the park named after her?
So that's an incredible story in and of itself, and I'm sure that would probably take up an entire segment as well. I can tell you that Rosalind Wyman was a powerhouse in the 1950s in Los Angeles. She was the youngest council member to be served. She was elected at age of 22, and as you noted, she was a big sports fan. And she lobbied when Brooklyn Dodgers said, hey, look, we're tired of this. We need a new home. She lobbied heavily, and she was instrumental in bringing the Brooklyn Dodgers to LA, a team that we've now enjoyed for, 5-6 decades now? Yeah. It's incredible. And so, but you're absolutely right. She was a powerhouse in politics. Her life was bigger than most can even imagine. A real, what do I want to say? A real leader for young women to look up to.
And she loved this park?
She did.
Oh.
I mean, I'm not really sure about the history of the park. I'd have to dig into it. I just don't know why that particular center was named after her.
Well, it just is fantastic because she is a force of nature. So there is probably a good reason why this natural area was fit. And how's it doing there? I mean, how is the Palm Rec Center? So
the Palm Rec Center, I'm happy to report, again, one of our projects that's complete and open to the community already.
Awesome. All right. So as we were talking, lots and lots and lots of playground upgrades we've talked about. So Venice Beach and Castle Peak, how are they doing and where are they? And interesting, Venice Beach playground right there on Rose, and then Castle Peak in a different area. So how are they going?
So those are actually two very interesting parks that you put them together, because those two parks are literally at the edges of the city of Los Angeles in two very different parts, the West Valley and then, of course, along the Pacific Ocean. Venice Beach, Rose Avenue is, we're looking to get the play equipment going there and get that reinstalled. I know that that's probably our one project that is furthest behind, simply because we're waiting for some regulatory approvals from the Coastal Commission. But other than that, as soon as that is cleared, that project is ready to move forward. We'll get in and get it complete very quickly.
How did the pandemic affect all of this? Did it ramp up your ability to make these improvements, or did it put things in a different timetable than originally planned?
So I think many of these projects were planned prior to the pandemic. Right. I think when we look at the pandemic, we certainly had issues of social distancing, lockdowns, but at the same time, for some of our construction projects, it may have accelerated timelines because without the public impact on our parks, contractors were able to get in and do work a little more efficiently. All in all, I think we stayed on target. We haven't really fallen behind because of COVID. I think we've done an exceptional job to get 7 of our 15 projects complete, and the remaining 8 are in some degree of development.
Wow.
So,
well, good job. Good job. So, as we mentioned as well, a lot of these parks, pocket parks, community parks, and pretty old parks, parks that have been part of Los Angeles for a long time, including Sycamore Grove. Sycamore Grove, I think, is one of the oldest parks in the city of Los Angeles. So was it a heavy lift, or how's it doing over there?
So Sycamore Grove, I believe, is very close to completion. Let me see if I can just quickly look at it. I think it's nearing 50% or more in completion. It's not a heavy lift, but you're absolutely correct. It's one of our older parks just north of downtown LA, up along the 110 freeway at, I think it's Figueroa and Avenue 49. It's one of those parks that the community enjoys those parks. There's not a lot of park space because of the terrain actually in that area. Highland Park, Mount Washington. It's very difficult to build a park on a hillside. We've done it, but it's not an easy task. But in this particular case, Sycamore Grove is one of our more beautiful parks, and you're correct, it's one of our older parks in the city of Los Angeles.
Since Measure A is continuing to have this stream of revenue to be able to do this, and prior to that it was Project A?
Proposition.
Proposition, excuse me. A lot of these parks, had they been not maintained or, to the degree in which they needed to be because the money wasn't there, and now this is going to sort of assure that there's going to be a more consistent, oversight on all of these areas?
So one of the things Measure A doesn't pay for is routine maintenance.
Ah, okay.
So that is something that still falls to the department and the city's budget process. But in terms of updating the equipment, of making capital improvements to these parks, whether it's out in the physical park space or inside one of our facilities, such as a pool or a rec center, those are the funds that Measure A can be used for.
Interesting. Okay, so that kind of leads me into wondering about, because a lot of the things that people are concerned about when they go to a park, especially if they're bringing their children, is safety and cleanliness. So did some of these improvements actually address those concerns? And then from the Rec and Parks Department, what are your plans, hopes, and dreams of the future that all of this hard work doesn't go for naught?
Right. So that's actually a great question, because safety is utmost to us and to our patrons. I've gone to several community meetings where certainly the elderly have expressed concerns about gangs in parks or unruly people in parks. And it is a challenge. We are working very closely with our park rangers and LAPD when necessary to get in and resolve those issues. Whether it's through Measure A, I don't believe any of these projects we're installing security cameras or lighting, but we do have other projects where through other funding that we are taking that wholeheartedly. We're working with LAPD and our park rangers to identify areas of parks that are not well lit, but where maybe unscrupulous activity is occurring. And we're looking to see about putting in lighting and security cameras in those areas so that people can see what's going on around them. We're also working with our maintenance crews to cut back some of the brush, get rid of the underbrush, basically so that everything is visible to everybody.
And does that include the restroom facilities? Is that in your purview?
It is, and so the restrooms, those are some of the things that, again, the maintenance issues, we've been very successful with our budget this year. We're hoping that, we can add to that core that, maintains those restrooms in our facilities. Some of our older facilities, we're putting in new restrooms, new field restrooms. Those are some of the things that we're looking at. We've also added in a few of our parks over the last 2 years the self-cleaning restrooms, and so those will be some of the things that we also look at, is that they become a little bit more maintenance-free and don't require as much attention, but we certainly will have staff on site to address any concerns with those restrooms as well.
Okay, I've never heard of a self-cleaning restroom. I mean, can I have one in my house? What is that? I don't understand.
So self-cleaning restroom, the department has, over the last couple of years, explored technology from other parts of the world, and self-cleaning restroom is certainly one of them. It's a restroom facility where once you enter, you have a certain amount of time to take care of personal needs, and at that point, the restroom will unlock if you have not done so, and then it goes through a cleaning cycle, and the restroom is cleaned. I have to be honest, I haven't seen one in actual operation, but I do know that we have a couple that are out there in the field, and we're looking at installing more. Apparently, people are very pleased with the technology. So, again, this is one of the things that Measure A is on the books for, is that we have facilities that are getting older, and it's not just the age of the age of our facilities, but it's the new technologies that make our jobs easier and have a direct benefit to the communities to keep those facilities clean.
I think what we did learn over the last 18 months is that we need to get outside. There is possibility outside, and we've all, I think, sort of had a renewal of our enjoyment of getting outside and spending time, so I would imagine that there's a lot more focus on LA Rec and Park in regards to its benefit to LA's and LA's communities.
Yes, I think, all of our people are working hard to get our facilities back up and running to full capacity. We think that, the comeback is going to be very strong when we're building up for our summer activities. We'd like to see those activities grow, and we think they will. You're absolutely correct. I think people have been shuttered for quite a while, and there's an eagerness to get out and enjoy parks and to socialize and be the social creatures we are.
So in regards to Echo Park, what are some of the things that people can enjoy there now?
Oh gosh, Echo Park, it's one of our older parks, and of course, a beautiful park. They've got the lake, we have boating, we have food concessionaires, excellent food by our food concessionaires, so I would encourage anybody to come out and take part in those. But we have a full rec center, we have activities all around, and it's one of the parks that I've enjoyed personally, even as a child and growing up in LA.
So what have we missed? Parthenia Park.
Parthenia Park, out in the valley. I think Parthenia is one that, I think that's one of the later projects that we did. It's in the bid and award So we're probably about within a 6-month window to completing that project.
So a lot of these parks, as you mentioned, have the recreation component to it.
Right.
So in terms of what LA Rec and Parks offer, we're not just talking picnic tables, water fountains and playgrounds. A lot of these places have swimming pools and community centers and game fields for softball and all that kind of thing. So are all of those part of these upgrades that you are being able to work on or finish?
They are. They are. And actually, that's a very good point. Just as, not all of these parks are play equipment, not all of the funding is Measure A. So we are tapping into other funding sources such as Proposition 68, which is through the State Parks Program. We're awarded 4 parks there where we're doing massive overhaul. We actually have 2 new parks that we're building under Proposition 68. An area of Brooklyn Heights in East LA and Allegheny Park, which is out in the North Valley. 2 brand new parks, beautiful parks that are going to be, Brooklyn is one of, and I'm calling it Brooklyn, it's not the official name, but I know that we're working with the community to get a name for that park. But the application identified it as Brooklyn, so I just wanted to be clear on that.
Right.
But one is a pocket park that's going to be enjoyable for families and have pathways for things. Allegheny is going to be a little bit larger park. And the neat thing about these new parks and even the parks that we're doing now and part of the equipment that we're going to be doing under Measure A is we're getting back and revisiting with some of these communities and saying what's important in these parks, because
dog areas. Everybody got a dog over the pandemic
They
period.
did, and I'm sure we're going to have lots of requests for new dog parks. But there's a lot of cultural history in different parts of the city, and I think there are communities that feel that they've been left out. And so one of our challenges is going to be getting back out and reinvigorating some of these discussions and getting these communities parks that are meaningful to them. You mentioned the Roslyn Wyman Park. There's a history there, and there's a history in each and every one of these parks. And these communities know that history better than the Parks Department in some cases. And so we do want to hear those stories from the community. We want to hear what they're telling us, and we want to do equipment, play equipment, fabricate things that are meaningful to that community, that reflect the cultural or the historical elements of those communities.
All right, so if people want to reach out or find out or all of that kind of stuff, what's the best website to go to?
LAparks.org. If you go to LAparks.org or just do hashtag LAParks on social media, you'll be taken to our websites. We're doing YouTube videos, we're doing Zoom meetings with communities, we're doing surveys. We encourage everybody, if you can, whether it's on a cell phone, a tablet, a desktop PC, join in the discussions and share with us your ideas. We want to hear them.
Thank you so much, Bill. It's great to see you again.
You're welcome.
All right. And that's a wrap on this LA Currents.